And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another weekly review with The Robot, brought to you by the Movie Pope. And here he is, bolts and nuts akimbo, The Robot.
The Big Apple is always buzzing with action, regardless of a decade. And in 3 days of the Condor, it's pretty lively, 1970s style, with Robert Redford playing an analyst who just happens to have the worst day of his life, which gets even worse as each day progresses. Now I enjoy a good spy thriller as much as the next guy here, and there are 2 of them on this channel, and I appreciate spy movies that don't follow the Bond model. 3 days of the Condor isn't giving us a clean-cut spy movie where the government is the good guy out to bust evil terrorists or dictators. Instead, it's an internal conflict that maybe human resources isn't adequately prepared to handle. There are a lot of twists and turns, but there are elements that made me scratch my antennas. Didn't ruin my overall experience of the film, mind you, but it was enough to make me pull on a few threads here. So, let's take a look, shall we? Robert Redford plays Joe Turner, your average run-of-the-mill CIA analyst who spends more time looking at documents than engaging in gunplay. A bit of a screwball, but hey, he's lovable. He goes off to get lunch for the office and comes back to find a rather unpleasant surprise. All of a sudden, those extra sandwiches just seem like a huge waste. Anyway, he quickly brushes off his fieldwork skills and must survive while being hunted down by the same crew that offed his co-workers earlier. Kinda impressive, too, since he just does all this based on what he's read. As much as I rooted for Turner to survive this game of cat and mouse, it seems rather ridiculous that a bookish fellow could take on seasoned guns for hire and spooks with moderate ease. The paranoid part, though, is very believable. Redford does play the charm like a fish to water, especially when he gets it on with Faye Dunaway, but he's too much of a pretty boy to be a hardened killer. Maybe Burt Lancaster or Charles Bronson could definitely pull that part off, but hey, if you're trying to get people into those seats, you take the path of least resistance. Poor Kathy Hale is just doing her Christmas shopping when she gets dragged into this whole mess with Turner and the CIA. I just feel so bad how from the get-go she is held hostage by this pretty boy lunatic ranting and raving about the entire agency coming after him. Seriously, ladies, if you look past the good looks, he's basically a nut running around New York with a half-loaded gun. Sure, at the beginning, she's scared stiff by what's happening here, and she even calls him out on it, all before she gets tied up. I absolutely hate how they make her fall in love with him when a few minutes earlier he was holding her at gunpoint while he got his 40 winks. By then she becomes an accomplice in his shenanigans. Again, can you please look past the Ralph Lauren sweater model look and see him for what he is, and he was threatening a woman's life. I can tell you for a fact that if a hot chick did all this, the guy wouldn't be so easily swayed, especially if she's pointing the barrel at him. I find it funny how these movies are just jam-packed with action, the kind that, in a normal world, would send people running helter-skelter and the police are out and forced to deal with all this gunplay. But, in movie world, people can get into scuffles and life-or-death struggles, maybe dump a body into a fountain with some kids nearby, and nobody bats an eyelid. How friggin' weird is that? Do people just not care? I'd say the assassins and spies doing all the sniping aren't in the least concerned with being self-effacing. I mean, come on, they're pulling out guns and just peppering the place and conveniently missing all the civilians. The beginning of John Wick Chapter 3 is a pretty good example. A guy gets a pencil jammed into his eye hole and it's just a regular Tuesday evening out on the town. Even if you're the best marksman in the whole wide world, there is still that slim margin of error where you may, just maybe, accidentally hit the office worker out for lunch who's minding her own business. Couldn't they fight in a place less crowded? Or do they just not give a dog's tally-wackle about the innocent bystanders? I guess the whole protect the people credo is more of a suggestion rather than an order. Max von Sydow plays the assassin Albert, who led the operation that eliminated one of the CIA's branch offices in New York. For me, he was a far more intriguing character. We didn't get to see much of him, only appearing in moments when poop is about to hit the fan. We're spoiled nowadays with villains giving their reasons as to why they do whatever they do, however shallow or lame said excuses. I mean, the 80s was replete with corporate dudes who wanted to bulldoze low-income or historical places just to build a fancy mall or spa or whatever. Robert, though, is like a ghost. He just pops in and out and nobody seems none the wiser. And, just like a ghost, when you do see him you're the only one and trying to convince others that he exists is a pointless endeavor. Von Sydow does a phenomenal job in playing a villain who is menacing but doesn't give everything away. It's irrelevant, really, because his motives or thought process isn't the focus here. It's him trying to catch Condor and Condor doing his best to get the F out of Dodge. He doesn't need a reason and frankly, we don't care. This movie definitely leans into the meaning of inside job, especially when it comes to what Turner uncovers that gets the entire organization wetting itself out of fear. Robert is hired to remove any evidence that could possibly put the CIA in an embarrassing position, namely seizing oil fields. Furthermore, they go to great lengths to hide it, which is a questionable move given how one of the CIA's functions is to sift and analyze data. So, if you got a secret, it ain't gonna stay hidden for long. It's funny how Turner makes the same move to use the press to expose the government the same way when he plays Woodward in 1976's All the President's Men. I like how it's making the adversary out of Turner's superiors, but it's also leaning into the zeitgeist of the age where the government was being regarded in a negative light and everything they said was taken with more than just a grain of salt. The hero wasn't a globe-trotting spy but a nerd, and the big baddie wasn't a foreign tin-pot dictator with ambitions of grandeur, but a greedy boss who was incredibly careless. I definitely get slow horses vibes from this movie, and that's not a complaint in the slightest. Joe Turner is one of those misfits where you kinda have to wonder just where does he fit in the pecking order in the intelligence community. Really, he's a nobody, someone who's just one of the many bureaucrats that make the CIA tick over like a well-oiled machine. Any cockamamie schemes you can think of, from the Bay of Pigs to arming the Kurds, it's the Joe Turners who make it all possible. Seriously, dudes, give yourself a round of applause. Because if you foul this soup real bad, then you're gonna end up running around the city just like Robert Redford. I kid, but seriously though, Robert Redford in this film doesn't stand out too much. He's innocuous, except for the fact that he looks like a golden god. Not for nothing, though, since he is giving it the good old-fashioned honest try here, even with the obligatory fight scenes that are embedded into spy thrillers. Is he believable as a CIA analyst? Not really. Is it hilarious to see him act like a total spaz? You bet your sweet bippy. I suppose the 1970s was both the best of times and worst for Redford. He makes banger hits like The Sting and All the President's Men coupled with the middle tiers like 3 Days of the Condor. Great, but maybe not playing to his strengths. But compared to something like The Way We Were or Electric Horseman, it's not so bad. Thanks for watching, and if you don't mind, please leave us a like, it helps a lot. And while you're at it, subscribe so you never miss an episode drop. This is the Robot signing off.